Good afternoon, class. Today we are going to be doing this in class, and I'm going to teach you guys how you guys are going to work on your lesson at home. So I'm going to record myself, and then I'm going to replay it. So you're going to replay it at home, but today we're just going to do it in class. So I want to get started with the objective. The objective today is I can recognize and write for number patterns. The first thing we're going to talk about is a sequence. So a sequence is a function whose domain is a set of consecutive integers. So there's normally commas in between them. And the domain is 1, 2, 3, 4, going up to n. It is the relative position of each term. So this means that it's the first term. This means that it's the second term, third term, fourth term, all the way up to n terms. You do not need to start with the first term. You could start with the second term. However, these are just the relative positions. Then the range is the actual terms in the sequence. So we call A1 the first term, A2 the second term, A3 the third term, A4 the fourth term, all the way up to AN. If we have a finite sequence, then there is a limited number of terms. Then it will end at n, no matter what n is. However, if we have an infinite, then it keeps going. So in this case, this one is finite because there are 4 terms. Sorry, I'm getting used to this. However, if you look over here, this is infinite because we have dot, 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 which represents that the sequence will go on until infinity. A sequence can be specified by equation or a rule. So we will also learn how to write rules. And the rules will look like a formula. They will either written as a to the n equals an equation or f to the n equals an equation. Either way, you could write it. You could write it with a to the n or f to n, whichever one you feel more comfortable. So let's start with some practice. The first step we will use is we will want to find the first 6 terms. So how we do this is all we're going to do is plug in n1 through 6. So right now if we do a to the 1, we need to find the first term. That means the first term. A2 means the second term. A3 means the third. A4, A5, and A6. So how we do this is all we do is whatever the little n is, we plug that into the equation as n. So in the first one, we'll do 2 times 1 plus 5. So 2 times 1 is 2 plus 5 gives us 7. Keep plugging them in. 2, wherever we see n, we plug in the little value. So which would be another 2 plus 5. So 2 times 2 gives us 4 plus 5 gives us 9. We look over here again. 2 times 3, wherever n is, plus 5. So 6 plus 5 gives us 11. Keep plugging in. 2 times 4 now, plus 5 gives us 13. And then wherever we see n, we plug it in for all 6 terms. And the last one, we'd plug in 6. And when it says, what are the first 6 terms? These will be the first 6 terms. The first term is 7, the second term is 9, the third is 11, 13, 15, and then 17. However, like I said, we could write it a different way. So number 2 is written in the second form. So we will still find 6 terms, but instead of writing a little 1, we're going to do f of 1. Then we're going to do f of 2, f of 3, f of 4, f of 5, and then f of 6. We do it just like number 1. Wherever we see an n, we plug what we put in here. So if this is a 1, we're going to plug in 1 for n. If it is a 2, we're going to plug 2 in for n. So right now we have -3, to the 1 minus 1. Simplify that, gives us negative 3 to the 0. However, we know anything raised to the 0 power would simply be 1. For the next, just keep plugging in. Now we plug in 2 rather than 1 for n. So we have negative 3 to the 2 minus 1, which is negative 3 to the first, which is just negative 3. Then we plug in 3 for n. Are you guys getting the hang of it? So we have negative 3 squared. That just gives us 9. Now we just keep plugging in, chugging. Now we plug in 4. So this would be negative 3 to the third, which would give us negative 27. Plug in 5. So negative 3 to the 5 minus 1, which is negative 3 to the 4. I want you guys to start recognizing the patterns too, because the next thing we'll have to do is we'll have to be thinking about how these patterns are written from those rules. Then our last one, negative 3, plug in 6 for n, so 6 minus 1, negative 3 to the fifth, which would give us negative 243. Do you guys notice how every odd number gives us a negative and every even gives us a positive? So think about that for some rules. Then these will be the first 6 terms that we will be looking for. Alright, so now I want you to pause the video. I will pause it in class. And I want you to work on the next 2. Then at home you would play the video as soon as you are done. However, I'll play when I see majority of you guys are done in class. So just go ahead and just hit the pause button. When I think the majority of your guys are done, we'll come back together as a class. So a to the n, now I just plug in the first 6 terms. So a to the first, a2, a3, a4, a5, and a6. Plug in the numbers. 1 plus 4, that gives me 5. Now I use 2. I almost said 1, but I used 2. 2 plus 4 gives us 6. Then 3 plus 4 gives us 7. 4 plus 4 gives us 8. Are you guys getting the hang of it? 5 plus 4 gives us 9. And 6 plus 4 gives us 10. So hopefully you guys got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 as your answers. Last one with the 6 ones. So let's start with f of 1, f of 2, f of 3, f of 4, f of 5, and f of 6. So you guys should be copying these down with me and checking your answers. So we plug in, even though this one has 2 n's, whatever our n in parentheses is, we plug it in for both of them. We put them wherever we see n. So I put it on top and at the bottom n. So this will be 1 over 2. And don't forget to simplify. Don't just leave it as 1 over 1 plus 1. So now we plug in 2 for both of the n's. So now I get 2 over 3. Plug in 3 for both of the n's. I get 3 over 4. Plug in 4 for both the n's. I get 4 over 5. Plug in 5 for both of the n's. I get 5 over 6. And plug in 6 for both of the n's. And I get 6 over 7. So I want you guys to look. This one was just adding, increasing it by 1 each time. And I started at 5. So let's start thinking about how we got these equations. But if you have any questions, there will be a reflection at the end where you could write down your comments, questions, or concerns. However, now I'm going to move on to the next part that we're going to do. So instead of finding the first 6 terms, we will be given the terms and we want to find a pattern or a rule. So this is called writing the rules. So we want to recognize a pattern. Some of you guys will be very good at this. Some of you guys may struggle a little bit. However, the more you get used to it, hopefully the better it'll get. So what I want you to do is ask yourself, what are you doing for get from one term to the second term to the third term to the fourth term? So do you see a pattern? Do you see a similarity? You might want to think about adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, squaring, cubing, or a combination of all of them together. So if we look at question number 1, how did we get -1? Then how did we get -8? Then how did we get -27, -64? Did we multiply by something? Did we add something? Did we cube something? Did we square something? So if you guys want to take a minute, you could pause it and think about what the pattern is. However, what I noticed is that I took -1, and if I cube it, it still gives me -1. Then if I take -2 and cube it, I get -8. If I take -3 and I cube it, I get -27. If I take -4 and cube it, I get -64. So we're going to think about how we write a pattern. So I start with a to the n equals. What stays the same in each one? Well, if you notice, we're cubing all of them. So I'm going to write that at the top. Then I notice that they all have a negative. So I know that stays the same, so I'm going to write that. But if you notice, we go 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. This is the first term, this is the second term, third term, and fourth term. So instead of putting a number, I'm going to put a variable. I'm going to call it n. So whichever term we are looking for, we just put that in for n, but make sure it's negative, and then we cube it. So this would be our rule. However, I also want you to find the next term. So we have the first 4 terms, so we're looking for a to the 5th, because that will be the last term. So all I'm going to do is type in 5 for n. So what is -5 raised to the 3rd? It'll just be 125, but make sure it's negative, because anything cubed that's a negative, it'll still be negative. So our 5th term is -125. Let's take a look at problem 2. I'm going to write all the ones that are not in fraction form in a fraction form. So 3 could be written as 3 over 1. Then I have 3 over 2. Well, how could that be written as a fraction? Well, we know that it would be anything on top equal to what at the bottom. Well, I noticed that there's a 3, so I want to keep the 3's going. So I'm going to do 3 over, well, it would be over 3. Then it would be 3 over 4, 3 over 5, and let's keep the top 3. So I would just have to multiply the bottom by 3, which would give me 6. Hopefully you guys all see the pattern. The top stays the same, which is 3, but the bottoms keep increasing by 1. So our pattern would be a to the n. Write whatever stays consistent, so the 3 stays on the top. However, the bottom is what is changing, so that is where I'm going to put my variable. I'm going to label it n. So this would be our rule. Our rule would be a to the n equals 3 over n. So I found my first 6 terms. Now we are looking for the 7th term. So since a sub n, I have a sub 7, I'm just plugging 7 in for n. So I have 3 over 7, which would be the next term in our sequence. So take a moment, pause the video if you want, and I want you guys to work on 3 and 4. Alright, we are back together again. So, can anybody, since we're in class together, tell me what the pattern is? Well, think about cubing. Or squaring, I mean, sorry, my error. Well, 1 squared gives me 1, 2 squared gives me 4, 3 squared gives me 9, 4 squared gives me 16. However, these are all 1 more. So I could just add 1 to it. So 1 squared plus 1, that'll give me 2. 2 squared plus 1, that'll give me 5, because 4 plus 1 will give me 5. 3 squared plus 1, that'll give me 10. 9 plus 1, 4 squared, 16 plus 1 will give me 17. So let's write the equation. What stays consistent? The plus 1. We are adding 1 in every case, so that will not change. Then we also have the square. The square is the same in each case. However, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are what are changing, so we put our variable there. So it will be n to the second plus 1. This would be our rule for this one. So like I said, it won't always be adding, multiplying, squaring, cubing. Sometimes you'll have to do a combination. So in this case, we squared and we added. Our next term, we found the first 4, so we are looking for a to the 5th. All we're doing is plugging 5 in for n, so 5 squared plus 1. 5 squared gives you 25, plus 1 will give you 26. 26 will be our next term. Moving right along, let's think about how we arrived from one to the next. Well, negative 4 to negative 8, all we did was subtract 4. From negative 8 to negative 12, subtract 4. Negative 12 to negative 16, subtract 4. Negative 16 or negative 20, we subtract 4. So if we subtract 4, subtract 4, subtract 4, subtract 4, subtract 4, if we keep going, isn't that the same as just multiplying by a negative 4? So let's think about a rule. Let's say a to the n, we want negative 4, but then we want it, if this was the first term, we only have 1, then we have 2 negative 4s, then we have 3 negative 4s, then we have 4 negative 4s, then we have 5 negative 4s. So we are just multiplying by whatever term we have, and I'm going to call that n. So if we plug the 1 in here, negative 4 times 1 will give me my first number, which is negative 4. If I plug in 2, that just means I have 2 of these negative 4s. If the third term is just 3 of these negative 4s. So that is why I'm using multiplication. Now we have the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are looking for a to the 6th. So just plug in 6 where we see n. Negative 4 times 6, that will just give me negative 24. So here is the rule and the next term in our sequence. Alright, flip to the next page. There is a summary sheet. I want to know, write down everything you learned. Write down, oh, I learned sequences. Maybe anything that you know about sequences. I want to know what the hardest part, or what part you felt you want to struggle with, or that you want to review tomorrow. Then each one of these are the objectives that I listed off at the beginning of the day. So I want you to circle 5 being you completely understand the objective, that you will get 100 if I quizzed you right now. 1 being I still need practice, I need some extra practice problems, maybe we could do a review, or you have some questions. Down below this, you have a place where you can write any question that you have for me, any concern, anything you want me to clarify. Alright, so I hope you guys start enjoying. This is called Flipping the Classroom, and we will be doing this for the rest of the chapter. Alright, well, I will answer any questions that you guys have right now.